brief introductions. My name is Nicholas Strelicast from City Manager. To my right, we have Carol Dawes, the Clerk Treasurer, Janet Shatney, Director of Planning, Permitting, and Assessing Services, and Deputy Fire Chief Joe Alsworth. And joining us on Zoom is Kyle Madash, who works at the state, believe, A&R. So Kyle can, if any state-related issues come up, he may be able to address the questions as well. So we've invited you here. This is an informational meeting. You've received letters from the city in December about substantial damage. First of all, we're upset that so many people, that you had to be here in the first place, that so many people received these. For context, I know that some of our neighboring communities were handing out 8 or 10 of these letters, and we were at the 86 level. So that just gives you a scale of the damage here was significant. Even by the state's own metrics, we were the hardest community hit. So we're sorry we have to have this meeting in the first place, and that it's such a big one because of all the impact that was felt by our residents. So what we'd like to do, because we have an hour today, I'm just going to go through the contents of the letter that you received very quickly, just to may answer some of your initial questions. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up to specific questions that may come up that are unanswered. And we'll try to limit the questions to 2 minutes so that we can keep moving through as many people as possible. So let me start off with that. And let me pull this up. Okay. So, presentation mode. Okay. So, why did you get this letter? So after the city reviewed several sources of information, which included a walk-around survey of damaged neighborhoods, it included reviews of what code enforcement had seen in the field, review of flood footage, conversations with the states, reports from the disaster relief groups that were helping folks like you. Your home was tentatively determined to be substantially damaged, and I've highlighted, bolded tentatively. That's a very important part of this letter. And here you have the excerpts from the letter, so you can at home you can remember, have this with you as you're looking at it at home. So what is substantial damage? It's a term used by FEMA that uses, it's basically a quantification of the damage that a property sustained, in this case as a cause of a flood, okay? It's formulaic. It's damage equal to or greater than 50% of the pre-flood assessment value of a home. Now, just to, do the math, just so you know how we're gonna do these calculations, right? So let's, for the sake of argument, say we have a home that's assessed at $100,000 before the flood. The cost to restore the damage caused by the flood is $20,000. So then we just do the math, right? It's $20,000 of damage divided by $100,000 of the assessed value. That's 20%. This is not a substantially damaged home, okay? Example 2, same home, $100,000 assessed value before the flood, got hit harder. The cost to restore the structure to pre-damage condition is $65,000. Again, we do the math, $65,000 in damage divided by $100,000 in assessed value, 65%, that's greater than 50%. So yes, this home is substantially damaged. That's what we are trying to, that's what we're trying to determine through this process, okay? And this is required by FEMA. I'll get into that in a little bit. So what did you need to do after receiving this letter? The goal of the letter was to encourage you to come see Janet and Michelle at the Planning and Permitting Office in City Hall, so that we could make the determination, remove the determination or make the decision that the home is substantially damaged. The reason you got the letter is because we didn't have an assessment of how much damage monetarily your properties took on, okay? So we were encouraging people to come with documentation of the cost to repair your structures, so that we could then do that math that I showed on the previous slide. Now, you can see here from the letter, we asked for people to come see Janet by December 31st. that didn't happen. I know there was a lot of information for people to process. So because of that, we're not keeping anybody to that deadline. We still want you to come see Janet and Michelle in the planning and permitting office so that we can, like I said, do the math on the substantial damage determination. So why do you need the permits, and why do we use these permits to make this determination? So if your structure is in a floodplain, which all of yours are because you got this letter, all repairs in a floodplain require a flood hazard permit from the permitting office. So you may be in several buckets here. You may have not yet started making any repairs to your property, but you intend to. And if you intend to, you need to come see Janet so that you have your permits for when you're ready to start the work. If you made repairs already to your home without a permit, you still need to come see Janet so that we can do the math about whether it's substantially damaged or not. If you do not plan to make repairs to your home, you don't need a permit now, but you should contact us to let us know that so that we can take you off the list, so to speak, and be aware of what's going on with your property. So that's really why the theme of this is come see Janet. So why are we doing this? Why did you get this letter? So the city of Barre since 1974, I believe it is, has participated in the National Flood Insurance Program. So as a result of participation in that program, we are required to enforce flood regulations. They're called our flood hazard area regulations. So those are have the strength of law, and we have to enforce them to maintain our participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. If we do not enforce these regulations, we will fall out of compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program, and the consequences of that would be that nobody in the city of Barre, residents or businesses, would be able to get flood insurance. Okay, so that's why we do this. That's why those flood regulations are in effect, and that's why it's important that we enforce them. So again, where can I get help or answers to my questions? We really want you to come see Janet, come see Michelle, who works for Janet, it's the permit administrator. They're both here at City Hall, and there's their contact information. We will post this on our website after the meeting. And then we've also invited Barre Up, which is it's an independent organization. It's the long-term recovery group, separate from City Hall. They've been working with residents in flood recovery. Shauna's here representing Barre Up. I believe there's other folks down the hall. So Barre Up's office, just so everyone is aware, is in the old police department space. It faces Main Street. You can get to it through the back hallway of the building. So that's really, we wanted to go through the bones of the letter. I know there's a lot more and you're going to have many more questions, but maybe some of those slides answered some of your basic questions. We're here to answer any other questions you may have. I would just note that you may ask questions specific to your home, which we may not be able to answer here on the spot. We may need to look at your file, but again, if you've picked up anything so far from the theme, is this letter is encouraging you to come see Janet. And if you have specific questions about your specific situation, your specific home, if we cannot answer it tonight, Janet and Michelle will help you. Shauna and the team at Barre Up are able to also help you navigate this process as well. They're also able to help connect you to resources that can help with recovery and repair. So these are the three contact information that I urge you to take down today, look up today when you get home after this is posted on the website. These are great people to talk about since you received this letter. So with that said, Janet, not that you have to say anything, but if there's anything you want to add, Carol, you may want to speak about abatements.
Yeah, one of the things, the main reason that I'm here in my capacity as clerk is to make sure that everybody is aware of the opportunity to request an abatement of your property taxes. If your property has been damaged, if you've been out of your property for any length of time since the flood, because it's been unusable, you can request a hearing before the Board of Abatement for abatement of your property taxes. We sent a notification out with all property tax bills back in August, but I know that, 6 weeks after the flood, people were still reeling with the after effects, and that it may have slipped through the cracks. So I'm here to make sure that everybody is aware of it. The green pieces of paper on the front desk there is a version of the flyer that went out with the tax bills, gives you information about how to submit a request to me to have a hearing before the Board of Abatement. We're beginning hearings next week for any of you who have already submitted a request for an abatement hearing. We're going to start holding them next week. They're scheduled for every Wednesday through the month of February. That won't get through the whole list, but it gets us started. And I just sent an email out 20 minutes ago to those that are scheduled for next week. So please feel free to grab one of those if you want to consider an abatement request. It's got my contact information on there, and you can, if you've got questions, feel free to contact me via email, via phone. But I encourage any of you who haven't already submitted a request for an abatement hearing to grab one of those flyers.
Carol,
Yeah.
if abatement is granted to the property owner, do you know when that takes place?
The abatement is associated with this year's taxes. So it would be associated with the property taxes on the property from the day of the flood, either through the period of time when you were able to get back into your house or able to restore your house to its pre-flood condition, or in the instance where properties are not able to be repaired, at least through the end of June, which is our current fiscal year, there could be abatement through that period of time. So it's for the current year. And if you have been paying your taxes and you're granted an abatement, you would get a refund. If you haven't paid your taxes because you haven't been able to be in your home, so that they're now delinquent, the abatement would not only remove those delinquencies, but it would also remove any late penalties and interest charges that have accrued since then. I will tell you, and because we're working with the legislature to get because your taxes are made up of both municipal taxes to help pay for city services and education taxes to pay for the school, we're working with the state to have them help cover the costs associated with abatement of education taxes. And because of that, we have to be really careful with the math. Our tax year runs July 1 through June 30. So that means that everybody will have to pay taxes for the first 9 days of July because the flood happened after that. But that would be part of the calculations. And obviously 9 days worth of taxes is not that much. So, but we have had a few hearings already, but we're ready to get really rolling with what they are. So there's a short list of questions that we're asking you to answer. And you just have to send me either an email with your request, the information is on here, or send it as a hard copy letter, or give me a call if you're not exactly sure how to answer questions or whether you should submit an abatement request. Everybody's entitled to one. The other thing to know is that while we encourage people to make requests as soon as possible, there is no deadline for abatement requests. So again, we understand it's been 6 months, people are still reeling with the aftermaths. You haven't missed a deadline. There is still opportunities to request abatements. So.
Thank you, Carol. So we'll open it up to your questions. What I would just ask is that we're recording this meeting as a resource, not just to you, but to maybe any other people who can't make it tonight. So this will be available to watch later. So because of that, we're going to ask you to come up to the microphone. That'll capture the audio so that people who are watching it later, including yourself, can hear the questions that are asked. And so, and then as I said, since there's so many people here, and I understand not everyone will want to talk, but if we could keep initial rounds of comments to 2 minutes to make sure as many people as possible have a chance to ask a question. And then to the folks in the back, there's a couple seats here on the side if you wish to sit, a couple here. So there are places if you're looking for a spot to take a seat. So
Those that are standing in the door, there are still a few seats in here. If you want to come on in, we could even roll
come on
some of
up.
these
So
down.
if you have a question, just,
I just, real quick, on the abatement hearing.
oh, yes.
If somebody cannot be here because they are in Florida, is there a way to do a call?
No, however, you don't have to be here in person for the abatement hearing, as long as you provide the information in the short list of questions. The board will hold your hearing.
These short list of questions that are on the bottom, do you know the answer to those?
We created an application and we sent the application out to the 60 people who have already requested an abatement hearing. Less than a third of them have submitted the applications. So we came up with this sort of shorter version of questions, hoping that we'll get a better response.
She is
So,
scheduled for February 7th.
okay,
That email I just read.
yep.
So she wanted to know if there was a way to do a call and.
At this stage of the game, we're not planning on having a remote option, so. But I did say in the email that I sent out that it's not mandatory that people be here and that the application will serve as their abatement request, so.
Okay. Any questions? Please please come on up.
Maybe I didn't get the answer correctly, or maybe it's already been said. So you mentioned you wanted to find out what our expenses were and if we were 50% or would be major damage, or 50% or less, or 49% or less would be minor damage. Why does that matter?
Those are the rules set by FEMA and for participation in the National Flood Insurance Program.
All right.
The ordinance that city council adopted.
All right. Absolutely understand. So with that said, what is the definition of damage? Because is 8 inches of mud in a basement considered damage? Is that the expense of getting mud out of the basement? Is that part of the damage? Because that's not structural damage.
So-
That's cleaning up damage.
So Tim, I'm just gonna look, I think this may not be an exhaustive list, but the letter you received had an appendix that said costs that may be excluded from the determination. Okay? Cleanup and trash removal.
All right.
Cost to temporarily stabilize a building. I'm not gonna read them all, I'm just
No,
gonna
you don't need
paraphrase.
to. If it's on the paper, I'll have, we'll get it done.
Yeah, cost of, just permit fees, carpeting, recarpeting. There's a list here. So just, those are the things that's why it's important to come see Janet.
I just wanted to get clarification.
Yeah, of course.
And I was just guessing that
Yeah.
there's probably other people that have the same questions.
Yeah, I can chime in too for the 50% question. So if it is 50% or more damage, that's when you trigger the elevation requirements. So 50% or less, you can repair it as is. If it's 50% or more, that's where you get into having to elevate it 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
Thanks, Kyle. Yep.
So if it's not 50%, you have to go and you don't have to get any more permits, right?
Sure. So one thing that I'm finding people don't understand is our flood hazard regulations require that whatever work you do inside, even if it's replacing sheetrock, equipment, electrical, you need a flood hazard permit, right? So then when we look at how much did it cost you to fix what you're fixing, if it's less than 50,000, it's called a non-substantial improvement. You just get a flood hazard permit, and what you'll be told is what you're improving, fixing, correcting has to be flood proof. So that's certain kinds of pressure treated lumber, certain types of sheetrock, but that's the difference.
So I I did come into your place, so I fixed my furnace.
Yep.
Like to raise the whole furnace 2 feet is gonna cost me thousands of dollars, whereas just fixing the furnace cost me $1,000. But, so, I don't see myself changing it unless, you know, I mean, I just don't see it. So do I need to get a permit?
You do. You need a flood hazard permit, and you likely had an electrician help put in the furnace.
I had the guy put it in the furnace, rebuild the guts of it. And at least for the moment, that's where it's staying, because that's what I can do.
So I'm just gonna, sir, if you don't mind, I'm getting requests online, because people may have the same questions you have, so that'd be great, thank you.
So anyways, I fixed the furnace. It's not 2 feet up above water level. And I don't believe it can become 2 feet up above water level in my basement. So I just don't see how that's going to happen, you know, the way it is. And that's my major thing that
I understand your question. It's all about becoming flood resilient, right? Resistant to the floods that we are going to continue to see. And we want you to get your flood hazard permits. You might get told something you don't want to hear. You've got 3 years. The life of the permit is 3 years once you get a permit, and to do everything you can to come into compliance.
well, obviously, I don't think that it's going to happen, just because you can look at it and see that it's not going to happen. But anyways, I don't think it's 50,000 and I'll get that permit.
Sure, come on in and talk to us. Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please come on up. I'm just gonna ask you to come up because people online are saying they can't hear. Thank you. And someone might have the same question or not have thought of it.
Okay, what triggers, you know, we live in that flood place down there. What triggers you having to lift your house up? If your house isn't able to be lifted up because it's all rock underneath and no cement foundation, and one half of it doesn't have a foundation, what happens if we wanted to fix it? How would you do that?
That's a good question. We've already had somebody who found it impossible to raise it up.
That's what we were told, we asked
Yeah,
about it.
so we have to follow the rules, and we would tell you, you have to raise up your house, right? If you are determined to be substantially damaged, and then you come to us and say, it's gonna cost $85,000 to be in compliance, that's called substantial improvement. And you have to get a permit, but you have the ability to appeal that permit to the Development Review Board.
I understand that, but there's no way that those old houses down there with the rock foundations, everything, we're told you can't lift it. We're not gonna be able to without $100,000. And we're still in the place where the river's gonna flood us. So I just wondered,
Yeah.
I guess it's time to bulldoze it and head south.
Okay.
I think given the conversations that are going on about housing and what we want to do in the North End, if any of you have gone to your ward meetings yet, it's a great opportunity to share, what is your vision? What do we want to see for the North End? And this is really our time to prove or state to FEMA or somebody else that this is impossible.
Are the conditions that you refer to
Sorry, I hate to be that guy, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Just a question, the conditions that you talk about, are those conditions set by FEMA?
Yes.
And they're also we have flood hazard area regulations that the city has adopted. They have the force of ordinance, they have the force of law.
Right, because you made a statement that it's possible to appeal that to the the planning board or?
The Development Review Board.
Or can the development review board overrule a FEMA directive?
They can overrule a flood hazard permit if they meet 5 very specific variance criteria. So the one person who has actually appealed their flood hazard permit and won was because the lot was shaped such that there was no way equipment could get in there and raise up her house.
Just a curiosity, and this isn't the city council. The governor of the state of Vermont came before the council back in October, I believe. I haven't really heard anybody from the city comment on the idea that Governor Scott had regarding the north end. And maybe this isn't the time to ask that question, but, you know, the properties, I find it, and I realize you're not setting that. That's why I asked the question, who made the determination? What good does it do to raise a furnace 24 inches when your basement filled up with 7 feet of water? Now, there's got to be some common sense here someplace. We're dealing with a building that's not even had as a basement, and it had 73 inches of water in it. So I really don't know. There's certain areas of the city of Barre, unfortunately, you know, I don't know what the future will be. If these buildings are abandoned, and I know the concerned local paper reported something that you said regarding about the requests you may have had for possible buyouts.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true or not, but obviously it's a problem to lose the quarter of the tax base of the city of Barre in buyouts. But there are areas of the city that, you know, they've been flooded 4 or 5 times. And I don't know what the answer is, but some of the regulations that property owners here are now faced with appear to be difficult to deal with. And that might be the biggest thing that you can help us with is the process of, I don't find it, you know, for myself to have to hire an attorney to work this process for a property that we might abandon. So you know, I do appreciate everything you're doing in trying to help, because it isn't easy. And I realize if you're dealing with the federal government as well. But anyway.
I appreciate your comments. You're right. The regulations seem like they're a hindrance trying to figure out all of this repetitive loss and where are we going to go. And all I can say right now is part of my job is to enforce the rules. So if you're going to live in the house, you've got to try to come into compliance. And we are all looking at the bigger picture being led by I forget what we're calling it, but it's the ward meetings are part of that whole planning process.
If a property owner had flood insurance and they had an adjuster come in to maybe try to establish the value of the dollar, can that be used to determine if it was 50% or more?
It has to be,
You can always look at it.
yeah, it usually has to be pre-flood or is,
It's how much will it cost to return the structure to pre-damage condition?
But isn't that what an insurance adjuster is doing in flood insurance?
I hope so. So yes.
I guess I'm getting at is contractors right now are kind of hard to find. A contractor is not going to come in and spend a day or two looking at your property, trying to determine a value of what it would cost to fix. They just may not do that, especially if there's a sense that it's never going to happen. So that's the problem that some homeowners here may have, is that they can't get a contractor to give them a number of what it would cost to fix.
Michelle and I have heard that. They've called contractors and they don't get callbacks, and they call the next one and nobody calls them back. And that's frustrating, I'm sure. There are not that many out there. And the state now has a program that requires any contractor who's doing work $10,000 or more must be licensed with the state. So there's an additional layer of compliance.
Thank you.
thank you.
If I may add too, the permit also protects the homeowner too, because it allows the contractors to have some oversight and to have some regulation that normally they wouldn't have. And we experienced this early in the flood where we had contractors breeze in from outside of the area and they were doing substandard work and people were like, oh, this guy just come in and said this. They weren't even licensed at that point. So that's why we urge everybody to come in and get their permits so that we are providing the oversight to those folks.
And I would just finish by, your comments about the governor came in here in October and presented a plan. I think that the ward meetings, we were trying to get some of that feedback. They wrapped up last night, actually. But look, you have three counselors here, one online. I saw another one in the hallway. I think people heard your comments. I think that, just my personal opinion, I think we heard a lot of compelling ideas. Certainly the idea of a floodplain on the north end seems to make a lot of sense, which was a part of what we heard. And housing, right? We know we have a housing crunch. So somehow building both floodplain and building back housing to the places that we know are at most risk is a very compelling concept in my mind anyway. But look, I think your comments were heard by people here in the room, and the process isn't over. We've had these 3 meetings at the ward level, 1 citywide meeting, and we're going to have these conversations are going to continue at the city council level. So I encourage you and, the people in this room who are, by most definitions, the hardest impacted to keep at these meetings and keep engaged, because it is your neighborhood. So, thank you. Shauna? There you go.
Hey, it's Shauna with Barry Up. I just want to let everyone here know that we do have, and I want to thank Washington County Mental Health Services. We do have 2 representatives here from Washington County Mental Health. If anyone needs any support tonight, mental health wise, they're here for you. Thank you all for being here. Barry Up. We're meeting in the office after this meeting if you want to continue the discussion. And also, we should let you know very excitedly, we have recently hired a construction project manager. So we do actually have someone right here working for you who can come and do a site assessment on your house, and we can really get a conversation going and help you coordinate all that effort.
Thanks, Shauna. We have a hand on the Zoom. Linda?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I have a question about sort of timelines. I keep getting confused because there's 3 things going on in my life. One is about substantial damage, one is about buyouts, and one is about rebuilding Barry. And so the substantial damage probably is a thing that has to be addressed first. If you need to do that, you have 3 years to do that. I don't see a buyout happening in 3 years, and I don't see rebuilding Barry happening in 3 years. So it just seems so crazy to put another $100,000 in a house or whatever, and then have it bought out or have it torn down to build the Barry redevelopment. So it's more than this meeting, and we can talk about the substantial damage seems to have a timeline, but the other things don't seem to have timelines. So it would be nice if we had an understanding of that before we invest more money. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is Janet just mentioned rules about if you go to this board and you go to that board, then you can appeal it, and then this and that and the other thing. It'd be nice to know what that process is and what those rules are, so we know ahead of time if we want to even bother fixing our houses. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can address quickly the first 2, and then Janet, if you want to talk about the DRB appeal process. So yeah, I think the substantial damage is the most timely thing. And we'd initially set that December 31 deadline, but when you see that in your letter, no one missed that deadline. We're extending it. We know it was a lot to process for people. So yes, just come see Janet. There's no, I don't think there's any thing that would preclude a substantially damaged home from being bought out. So these processes can move in parallel. The buyouts are slower, and the buyouts, just for context, I wasn't here the last time the city did buyouts, but I believe they took 2 years on Brook Street roughly to complete. We're still closing them out on the administrative end, but I think they took about 2 years to happen, is my understanding, on Brook Street the last time the city did those. So we're still moving quickly. The idea is not to, and I know that some people here are also interested in buyouts. So, the idea there is to move as quickly as we can with the right information. And what that right information is the state's looking to hire a consultant that can analyze, a hydrologist basically, that can give us information, give us, the city government and the city council, information about which houses make the most sense to buy out, right? There's around 40 residents and business owners that have applied for buyout. Just being very candid, the city can't afford to buy out 40 homes, both from a financial standpoint, because we have to front all the money and then we get reimbursed, but also from a tax-based standpoint, that would just be debilitating to the city generally. So what we're looking to hear from these experts is, if you buy out these particular houses, those can be turned into floodplain. Those have the best chance of reducing flooding in this neighborhood as a whole, right? So that's what we need to hear from those consultants. We don't have that expertise at the city, and neither, and the state's going to contract for it. We're going to take advantage of it, and then we'll make recommendations to the city council for buyouts. That will take time. The state hasn't secured that contract, and it'll take time to do the study. But once we have that information, the idea is to move on it so that people are not in limbo. It's not something that we can do ourselves. That's why we can't give you a better timeline. We depend on external inputs into the process to get that done. And then Janet, if you want to talk about the DRB process, I think that was what Linda was
Sure.
alluding to.
Thanks for your questions, Linda. I think what you've raised up for me as I sit here listening to people, I know the rules inside out, right? And it's a little difficult for me to sit here. I could totally baffle you all. I think what I want to commit to all of you is to put this on a web page, as sequentially as possible, so you can read it and understand. If I send you a substantial damage letter, you can appeal it, you can put it in your file, you can come in and get your permits and likely raise up your house. And it's a waterfall effect, right? Once you make a decision, something else is going to occur. And I think it's best for everybody if I put that out there, and then I can help anyone who has questions as to how it all works. It really boils down to, if I send you a letter in the next month and a half that you're substantially damaged, you're either going to appeal it, or you're going to come in and get your flood hazard permits and any other permits needed to develop your property, and likely have to elevate it. And then we go from there. And as you said, there's that, it seems hypocritical, right? The land doesn't support what needs to happen, although the rules say it must happen. And we're looking at this project that might change the whole nature and makeup of the North End. We've got so many things going on at once. So I would be very happy to do that for all of you. And in fact, I started that this afternoon, and I'm on 4 pages. So I want to be able to do that for you all, so you understand this happens, this happens, this happens. And then you can make your choices and talk to us about your steps and your stages and what happens if you don't do this or you decide to do that.
So
So
thanks, Janet. Why don't we go online, and then Nick, if you want to come up to the microphone in the meantime, so Brad, you have a question or a comment?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I was just wondering, for multifamily homes in the floodplain, does the whole building have to be in compliance before we can occupy individual units?
does the whole building have to be in compliance for you to occupy it? Is that what you asked me?
Just for like individual units, because if say we have a triplex, one unit, there's almost no damage whatsoever. It was the uppermost unit and inaccessible. So the other units are a little bit more damaged and will obviously need repair to come into compliance. So what I'm wondering is, can we occupy the third unit in order to gain some revenue so we can help fund those additional restoration attempts?
It's not tied to occupancy, is it? The substantial damage?
It's not, but with Joe here, as far as code enforcement, we could very easily have someone else in the city deployed to see if the unit is occupiable.
Yeah,
And
so-
that would absolutely help you out.
So Brad, why don't you reach out to code enforcement in the morning? The regulations aren't tied to occupancy, but there may be code enforcement. It's probably more a code enforcement issue than a flood hazard regulation issue, is from what we're
You
hearing.
have smoke detectors,
So Mr. Anderson, what I'd like you to do is reach out to them. They're very flexible in working with the owners and trying to get you back up and running. They'll make sure that the building is safe, that you have heat, and smoke detectors are in place, and as far as a work in progress, let's let them take a look at it and work with you.
So Brad, that right on the city's website, you don't have to click anything, just scroll down and there's a code enforcement box that'll send you to a contact information, and that'll go right to the fire marshal and the electrical inspector. Thank
All
you
right,
for the
thank you so
question.
yeah, thank you.
Nick?
Thank you. I want to make sure that I understand. I think I'm okay in regards to the substantial damage component, but yep, it's 50% of market value, correct?
Right, and in Berry City's case, it's the assessed value, unless you have an appraisal.
Yep.
That's within 6 months.
So part of the issue that I ran into when I had spoken with the zoning and permit office was that they gave me market value rate from 2006. I have to assume that my property's value was increased substantially over 2023, and having an inaccurate figure is sort of creating undue financial hardship in this situation, right? So like if my property value was $68,000 in 2006, the damage was $34,000. Now I'm at 50%. Same property in 2023, if it's hypothetically speaking $90,000, $45,000 would be 50%. Now I'm not substantially damaged. Is there any consideration in place right now for that sort of overarching situation?
That's a great question. Thank you. We've thought about that. There's no way the rules don't allow us to do what what you'd like to do. Yep. But I wonder if, because the city now has an assessor, we could get them to review your property.
Would that appraisal be now in January 2024 with the property in current condition, or would it be in July 9th, 2023 before the flood damage?
It's about,
because those are going to be probably very different figures as well, I would imagine.
right. So haven't been determined substantially
I
damaged?
think I'm okay. I
Right.
think I just missed it.
Sure. Do you plan on pulling permits because you're going to do any work inside?
I put in for the buyout, and I'm just everything on black right now. Like,
Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not
right now-
planning on doing
don't need
anything,
to do
because
anything.
if it takes 2 years, I would rather wait to see if the 2 years shakes out that way and then sell it as is to somebody that wants to do the work, or yeah, God willing, the buyout goes through for me and my family, and we can mosey on down the trail.
It's really about if you're not going to do any work inside that building and let it go.
Well, the caveat is that I didn't know that we needed a flood hazard permit until I got the letter in December, and the work was already done because my wife was 7 months pregnant when the flood hit the house. I'm not having electricity, water, or the risk of heat at that point in time.
Right.
with a new baby there. So it's just, and again, ignorance isn't an excuse in the situation of needing the permit, but didn't know it. I can assure you that the weeks following the flood, I wasn't looking online at the state's or the city's website to see that this was something that was required either.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If you've already started talking to Michelle,
Yep.
or you want to talk to us again. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Just so we document what's going on with your property.
Sure.
Because permits run with the land, right, people? So if you decide that you've done whatever you're going to do to your building and leave Berry City, that permit sits for that structure for the next person. So it's really important that we can document in the file
Okay.
what your and your wife's decisions are, where you want to go, what you've done.
Yep. Okay.
That would be great.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Please come on up. But
So I went and my house didn't have substantial damage, but the basement got flooded. And I went and fixed everything back to brand new. Then got told I have to move everything upstairs. How does like Lloyd's Plumbing allowed to do that without a permit? I mean, I just spent $30,000 and they told me that I have to move it upstairs and it's gonna add on to the, you know what I mean, the 50%. I've only put 28,000 in it. They're telling me if I move everything, that's added on to that too, but I've already paid for all that and I gotta move it. Moving it ain't gonna cost a lot. But what about Lloyd's? How does somebody like that allowed to do that?
I think we, Berry City and other municipalities have that problem with contractors and electricians. They're looking at their job. We look at it,
Don't they have to get a permit in Berry City?
they do. And
Why are they allowed to do the work without the permit?
because they didn't pull the permit.
They should have.
Shouldn't they be going after them, maybe? Somebody?
You, the homeowner,
Yeah,
can also pull that permit.
I got a permit, but I
Okay.
didn't know I needed one until it was all done. Same thing as him. I went and did all the work. My house, I'm putting a new furnace in, new water heater. That's all I needed. And then they're
So-
telling me now it's not,
Lloyd's knows better.
it's
They
not
know
up
they
to
need to pull
compliance.
permits.
Now it's not up to compliance. So now I gotta do all the work they did. I gotta take it all out, bring it upstairs, 4 feet on the wall or whatever. My house is up 2 feet off the ground level, so I didn't get flooded, just the basement. But what happens to somebody like Lloyd's? Are they responsible for like, I hired these guys to come down and fix everything and they needed a permit apparently.
That's right.
So,
They did.
so shouldn't the city go after them?
Well, the city didn't contract the electrician.
No, I did, but he needs a permit to work in Berry City. You guys are making the rules.
And they know better.
So just get away with it?
I mean, I don't know what the
No.
enforcement is. Is there
I mean,
litigation?
and not only that, why should I have to, so I'll let you finish that. Go ahead first.
So as far as the contractors, that's why we have the ordinance for, have the requirement to file a permit. As far as Lloyd's comes in play, if you wish to pursue that, we would need a letter of complaint to that effect, and then we would push it to Division of Fire Safety.
Well, yeah,
Yep.
I would
So
do it.
if you could do that, and
I
like
mean,
I
if I
said,
can get something out of them to cover the costs.
and we would file a complaint with the Division of Fire Safety and say, listen, they're operating without the permits, and
They should have known. Company
I
that's
can't
like-
promise you
that's a
what the
big
state's
company.
gonna do, sir. I wish I could, but I will.
I mean, I don't want to get these guys in trouble, but it's like, why are they allowed to come in and do all this work? Spend 28 grand and now I gotta move it.
I agree.
So-
I have no problem helping you move that forward to the state.
So why don't, what's your name?
Sylvain Mativier?
Oh, we've been emailing, Sylvain. I'm Nicholas.
Oh,
We've been
hi,
emailing. So why don't, you have my email? Why don't you write up that complaint, send it to me, and I'll make sure
How do I
these-
write that up?
Just exactly what you shared with us today, put it in writing, put it in an email to me, and we'll make sure the Division of Fire Safety gets it.
Yep.
Okay?
So I'm getting a certificate, elevation certificate done this week, next week. Telling me exactly where I gotta move everything. Being I wasn't substantially damaged, I do have to move it up, right?
You have to be flood proofed.
I
So,
had Ned come by already.
yep.
So,
Mhm.
I'll get more information out of my certificate that I'm getting, but they're telling me I have to lift everything 5 feet off the floor.
5 feet off
My
the-
house is
the
already a couple
basement,
feet up.
right? So your lowest floor, is it 5 feet from the
No,
basement?
from ground level, not the basement.
So without Michelle here, I'm,
He said 7.5 feet from ground level, but
Sure.
my house is 2 feet up.
sure. I don't know the particulars of your case, but we can certainly keep talking about it and find out why. Understand, when you apply for a flood hazard permit, all flood hazard applications are referred to the state. And the state has the ability to make recommendations and requirements based on FEMA requirements. So we almost become the pass-through. And so he's telling us to tell you, this is what you have to do.
All right,
Thank you. Please come on up.
I'll send you that letter.
Yes, please do, Sylvain.
I was hoping to get a clarification. So if I want to stay in my property and there seems to be some flexibility on the substantially damaged, whether it goes one way or the other. If it's not substantially damaged, I'm still going to see a huge increase in my flood insurance, I would assume, come the new year as all of this plays out.
It's whatever you report to your insurance company.
And at the same time, if I'm substantially damaged, my understanding is if you have insurance through the National Flood Insurance Organization, you're then eligible for the $30,000 in increased cost of compliance. Is that true? So if I am substantially damaged, then I can use that to leverage that funding. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, but I can't confirm without looking it up for you. Substantially damaged means you're gonna have to, the whole structure has to come into compliance. If you're not substantially damaged, only that which is damaged and you're gonna fix has to come into compliance.
And I wish what I could get an answer from National Flood Insurance is what it will do to my flood insurance for next year. Because what I'm trying to figure out is if I argue it and say I'm not substantially damaged and I do the things that I can and then I think I can only access that money though if it's substantially damaged, right?
All I know is
Yes.
substantial
Come up
damage
to- it
puts
has
you in a specific category. I apologize, I don't know the insurance stuff very well at all. I've heard that people are getting dropped and they find somebody else, and I don't know the answer to that.
And that was where I lost my train of thought. What I'm trying to figure out is how do we as a community find out what kind of increase we're looking at? Because I'm afraid that if I argue and say, oh no, I'm not substantially damaged, and I redo it as best I can, I may be looking at double digits insurance come the new insurance year. And so that really impacts, if that's the case, then I'm really a fool not to be substantially damaged because I can't afford it anyway. Does that make sense?
It makes
Like,
sense.
If it pushes the insurance.
But I
if we
can't answer
get
that.
answers from the insurance, how do we make a good educated
So I think
decision?
Kyle is looking like he's trying to jump in here. Is that right, Kyle, or did I misread your?
Do you have an answer?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna jump in here. Yeah, I can kind of straighten out your question at least a little bit. So the substantial damage, if it's not substantially damaged and you repair it to the pre-flood condition, your flood insurance will probably be similar to what it was. It may increase. I'm not really sure. That's kind of between the property owner and the insurance company. And then if you were substantially damaged, that is when you can leverage that extra $30,000 for increased cost of compliance. And after that, that would be like, okay, now your house is elevated, it's flood protected. That's probably when you would see a decrease in your flood insurance.
Thank you. And part of why I asked is, I don't know about other folks, but I got a letter from National Flood Insurance months ago that said, if you flooded, if it gave this list of like 6 things that if any of these happened, it will most likely result in an increase in your insurance. All of those things happened. So that's why, Kyle, I'm not thinking I'm looking at a level insurance here, and that's why I was.
Yeah. No, the big thing probably happened like right around October of 2022. That's when they went from their old rating system to what they call now is risk rating 2.0. So it has a different kind of algorithm that creates the rates. So somewhere in the year of 2022, when you renewed your policy, is probably when you saw that increase. And that was probably due to the new rating system.
We just got our bill, no increase. We had, they paid out the max of what we had, and we just got our bill on this morning. We're not renewing it.
I'll get out of here. Yeah, because it sure sounds like it's gonna increase. And so. Your statement, great. Okay.
Thank you. Sir, if you could please come up.
Carol? Yeah. Nicholas?
Hi, Gordon.
Didn't get your name.
Joe.
Met the chief a week ago.
Yes, sir.
He seemed like a pretty good fella, Mr. Bushman, but, well, one of these gentlemen alluded to 3 or 4 floods. I think if you go back enough years, it's many more than that. I know I've been down where I am 13, 14 years, and this is the 3rd flood. Now, the first 2, it filled the cellar. I mean, you open the cellar door and it's 7 feet. It's right there. But most of these houses down there are granite block foundation, dirt floor, so you can recoup from that. But this last one was a corker of a daily, as probably just about everybody behind us can attest to. They're devastated. I know I was. I think I got a man in the room that papers say he damn near drowned. But anyway, the papers say granite center of the world. If this keeps going, they're going to call it the flooding center of the world. It's going to overtake Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Just a few questions, because I know you want to get home to supper. I just got this letter yesterday because of miscommunications, but we won't hold that yet. But it says here, I haven't got a congruent answer to. At the time of the flood, or shortly after, there was yellow or red stickers put on the buildings. Now, the fire chief said there was even green ones. I said, green? Well, he said, that's if there's nothing wrong to it at all. Well, I didn't get a good answer from him. Maybe you can help as assistant. But it says right here, Barry City Code Enforcement or Fire Department officers worked on the various stages of tagging the structures. My house wasn't tagged. The only people of any concern that looked at it, as far as I know, was FEMA and your house insurance. And that doesn't amount to anything. I don't even know why they look at it, because they don't cover it. So, unless you had national flood, but. So who actually put those signs on the buildings?
So we actually went around and did the signs that were reported to us through 211, through the service community people that came in to help doing the flood damage assessments and what FEMA gave us. That's what we went off on our list on that, so.
Well, that's the first number I called, was 211.
And I will tell you that.
Right away, but I mean, it just.
And there was an issue with 201 initially, and we did register complaints on behalf of the city for that. And we actually went up to the governor's office because it was not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that took about 3 to 4 weeks to get them to get back in line. So I apologize on behalf of 211, but we were trying to go by what we were given to.
Well, I'm sure you did walk around, and many other authorities did too, but no sticker was put there. But the house is still there. You can put a sticker if you want. I just didn't, without a sticker, I don't know what they said or what they are.
Yeah, it was multiple sources of information. So not every house was tagged. Some of it was done by walkarounds that we did with FEMA. I know we had people from Florida helping, because I know they go through this with hurricanes. So it wasn't one source of information that was used to compile the list.
I spoke with it, came and looked at my particular old house. He said if that was down in Florida, they'd be torn down. It's just like an automobile, an older automobile, all right? If the damage is enough, it's totaled. It's totaled. There's probably a lot of these houses are. The cost today to repair stuff is astronomical. And you're talking about elevating houses up? You'd be putting into them houses 2 times what it could even sell for. And who'd want to buy them now after this last flood? So, anyway, still waiting for the sticker. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we are right at 6 o'clock. There's any, don't see anyone jumping at the bit to come up. So what we'll do, there's one more hand, Brad.
Hi, so just real quick question. What is it that determines coming back into compliance? Because I was reading the regulation earlier, and by page 39, my head was spinning. But I didn't really see anything that other than it saying that pre-flood condition. We're making a couple changes. I mean, new furnaces, new boiler systems are really expensive. Going to put in maybe some Rinnai heaters that are going to cut the cost back a little bit for us. Can we still come into compliance with those changes?
That would be determined by code enforcement, Mr. Anderson, and that's why I urge you to reach out to them, and they'll walk you through what needs to be done.
All right, thank you for your time.
Yes, please come up though.
Now, I just say, if apartment building are substantially damaged, we're told that they have to raise those apartment buildings up to be compliant?
The whole building will have to be raised up, yeah.
So I got a quick question. When is the city going to acknowledge that there's something wrong with the rivers? That's what I would like.
Why do we keep we keep flooding? I mean,
Well,
that
when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, like the level of, you've got an elevation level. Well, the rivers are full of sediment. So if there were to be less sediment, that level would go down.
So, sir, I encourage you to, we'll post the presentation that we were showing at the ward meetings, because the river science isn't that straightforward. In many cases, if you take the sediment out, it makes the water move faster and more violently. Sedimentation removal can be a solution, but it's not the be all end all. Just digging a channel down is not going to solve our problems. And that's not, I'm not a scientist, but that's what the people who know and study rivers, that's what they'll tell you. I'm happy to share, and I see Pat Moulton was on here. I'm happy to share the presentation that the state has been doing for our community meetings to sort of ground our conversations in science. We know we have to do something about the rivers. I guess I'll acknowledge it right now. We can mark it down that it's acknowledged. We need to make sure that our bridges really concern me. Our bridges are too low. We were sweating bullets in December with the Berlin Street Bridge, so we need to do something about that. We need more floodplain for the rivers to grow when there are flood events. So there are many things we need to do to coexist with our rivers. So if you need some sort of acknowledgement that we have a problem with our rivers, I'll do it right now, but I think we all saw it on July 10th. And it's not going to get easier. So we have a lot of things ahead of us to make sure that we can, that the next event isn't as bad for as many people as the July flood was. But digging channels into rivers to make them deeper is not the solution. I encourage you to look at that presentation because there's a lot more to it. Well, I'm not a river scientist, but that's what people who study this for a living tell us, and so I'm inclined to believe them. I think the mayor has his hand up. Are there any other comments in the room before I turn it over to the mayor?
No, Harley Walter Kidder tonight.
Mayor, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just one question that has been asked of me and I didn't know the answer to, but also just to pause to thank you for hosting this informational session and doing all you're doing to walk people through the process. I understand that Montpelier sent out their substantial damage letters in September, and I was wondering what was happening differently at the department head level that ours went out in December, and was there any communication happening ahead of time to flood impacted properties that we knew had been tagged to inform them of this, because everybody was rushing to make repairs and do what they needed to do. And now it feels like there are a lot of people that are trying to like backtrack now that they're getting information about the permit obligations. So is there a reason why it took 6 months to get this letter out?
Sure, thanks for the question, Mayor. We were collecting this information from a bunch of data points. I think one of the lessons we've learned from the response of the flood is that 211 just didn't work, and we were relying on 211 as we were asked to by the state. After the fact, we were playing a lot of catch up. Acknowledgement, it took time. I think the other thing, Mayor, to remember is that I believe Montpelier sent out 8 or 10 substantial damage letters, certainly not more than 20. We sent out 86. So the scale of the damage here, Mayor, was much grander than any other city. I believe the next biggest was Johnson, which I believe maybe sent out a half dozen. So it was a very large undertaking based on the amount of the damage that we sustained, certainly residential damage compared to the other communities that you referenced. I think it was 86.
Sent out 84.
84, I'm sorry.
84 letters.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I may have said that. There's a chance I
So
did.
on my spreadsheet, there's 86 lines.
That's
but-
probably why.
But some properties have 2 structures on it. So,
Yeah. So thanks everyone for being here again. I'm sorry you even had to be here. Oh, I'm sorry, Clerk Dodds.
I just wanted to remind, for anybody who came in after I blabbed earlier, the green papers here are information about requesting an abatement of property taxes for the current year for damaged properties. If you haven't already submitted an abatement request, the same form went out with the tax bills in August, but I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. Please feel free to grab one. There's plenty there, and if for some reason we run out, if you let me know, I will email you one, and we'll go from there. Just want to make sure everybody gets one.
Thanks, Carol. So this will be, and Janet.
Yeah, and as a reminder, it's really important that anybody who has questions calls my office. We're the ones closest to the information. We're the ones that are going to be able to give you the answers, or at least take in your information. If you call Nicholas or email in Nicholas, he's going to pass it on. Try to call my office. And other people should remember to funnel these questions and things to my office. So, thank you.
477-1465. Am I close?
You're right on, Gordon. Thank you.
So I will just for the presentation I did tonight, which hopefully answered some of the basic questions, we'll post that. This is being recorded, so we'll post this. We'll put it on Facebook and our website, the same place where the information for this meeting was, so that people can access it and come back and hear our answers. Again, I hope if you took anything away from today, I hope it's come see Janet. I know it was a lot to digest in this letter, but really the idea was to come have you talk to our planning office. So thank you for being here. I'm like I started with, I'm sorry you even had to be here. I wish we never had to hold these meetings, but we do. We'll be here to help you through the process. So thank you.